Well, now we're going to move into gameplay, and the first thing I want to talk about is arm abilities. Which one is your favorite, and also which one was your most used gameplay, most used arm ability? There will be some questions down the line that you might have to pull out your Switch and look real quick and be like, wait, what is it? But if you know off the top of your head, great. I'm pretty sure my most used ability and my favorite arm ability are the same, and that is Ascend. I went into the game thinking Ascend, I was not going to use it. I really thought I was going to use it sparingly, and I have found that I use it all the time, like we mentioned earlier. So for me, I love all the arm abilities. I don't actually use Ultra Hand, Auto Hand that much, especially once I realized that if I didn't have an item, I thought I just had the item, it was using Zonite, and I didn't realize that, and I was like, oh no, I messed up. So yeah, I love all the arm abilities, and I will say I think the UI was a little bit better than the Sheikah Slate abilities, and my only frame of reference for that is my mom. When she first played Breath of the Wild, it was hilarious. It frustrated the crap out of my brother. She could not get a hold of Magnesis. She just could not do it, which was hilarious to watch. But Ultra Hand, it took her a hot second, but she had an easier time with it, which I like. Obviously those aren't complete mirrors of each other, but she had a much easier time with that. She also had a much easier time with wow, blanking on the name, but the time reversal ability than she did over recall. Yeah. Than she did with the counterpart Sheikah Slate ability. So using my mom as a frame of reference, I feel like the UI was just a little bit easier to get a hold of, even though I feel like the abilities themselves are better. I miss my remote bombs, I will admit that. So my favorite and most used was Ascend. How about you, Adam?
I think my most used is probably Ultra Hand. I would say so. I do like a Zonai build. It is addictively enjoyable to just build random things, and especially once you've learned how to do the air bike, that you have a field day with that one. I think though, favorite ability though, I think it would be Ascend as well. Actually, I think I enjoy Ascend the most, despite not being my most used. I don't know. I think it's for a few reasons. I think one, it surprised me how enjoyable and satisfying it is to have. I think also just because, I don't know, it's creative. I like the idea of just being able to go through ceilings. It's fun. It saves a lot. It fixes a lot of situations which would be tedious without it. Having to climb your way out of things, having to find ways out that would be very tedious and not that enjoyable. Yeah, I would go with Ascend as my favorite, and plus it's got very cool visual when you're swimming through the inside of a mountain. I particularly love that one spot at the very bottom of the Julian Peaks where you can ascend up and you pop out right at the very top of the mountain. I didn't know I was there when I did that for the first time, and I was like, this is taking a while to load, what's going on? And then I popped out at the top of the mountain and I was like, makes sense. Yeah, I'd go with that as my favorite, and Ultra Hand is my most used.
Awesome. Nehru.
So my most used is probably Ultra Hand as well, since when I could, I built a vehicle almost throughout the entire game. But my favorite is definitely Fuse. Part of the reason is because I'm somewhat notorious for being a weapon degradation hater, and fused weapons have higher durability, right? So I pretty much always used a fused weapon when I can. But I also just find that mechanic to be incredible. I have had some of the most fun in the game just doing mad science experiments with random parts and weapons and items and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I still have refused to look at like a fuse guide to see what everything does, because it's just a tremendous amount of fun to slap a stake onto an arrow and see if it's actually going to do anything, which as far as I know, I haven't discovered a use for the stake arrow yet, but I'm still on the hunt. And the thing that sort of came unexpectedly for me is I kind of thought that all of the fuse combinations were going to look goofy just by the nature of things. But it turns out when you fuse particularly materials with single-handed weapons, they actually turn out to look pretty cool. And like some actual human touch was put into what those single-handed swords end up looking like. So I've had a tremendous amount of fun trying to decide what I think the coolest looking single-handed sword is, which right now I think is the Fire Lizalfos horn fused with a single sword. So I was not expecting to love Fuse as much as I did. I was expecting Ultra Hand to really win the show for me, and I do still really love Ultra Hand, but Fuse I have just been absolutely blown away by. It's one of my favorite video game mechanics ever.
You would definitely get along with my husband about the weapon degrading thing, because if there's one almost argument he and I have had is that I am a big fan, or I shouldn't say I'm a fan. I have no issue with the weapon breaking thing, and that's like why he won't play Breath of the Wild sometimes, is because of that. And I'm like, what? It's actually really funny. It's like the only thing I've ever teased him about, which of course I'm joking when I say this. I was like, maybe you're just not good at the game. And he's like, that's not true. I was like, maybe you just need to get good. I don't know. And he was like, you could play the games I play. Oh, well, it's because I'm not actually that good at games. I love playing them, but I'm not that good. However, I will say, and I have the streams to prove it, I jumped right into a lot of overworld bosses in Tears of the Kingdom, and I never do that. I was just like, oh, I have to beat a Flux? Okay. That would have happened years ago, but I have to tell him about the fusibility, because or your thoughts on it, because then that might, he wants to play Tears of the Kingdom, but I could be like, hey, I know someone felt the same way. Yeah. You'll love Fuse then.
Well, two things. First, my next video is actually called Why or How Tears of the Kingdom Makes Me Love Weapon Durability, because Fuse actually made me do a complete 180 on the topic.
Oh, cool.
The long story short is just that the chance to make new weapons makes losing a weapon actually kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, although it was hugely delayed by the release of Breath of the Wild, Daniel and I actually have a video arguing over weapon durability.
Yeah.
We'll finish one day.
Well, one day, but now I'm not even sure, like, where. I think my stance has also kind of changed on the matter because of this game. So, like, I'm not even sure. It. Yeah, we might have to do a total overhaul.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell your husband that there's a good chance that he'll like the mechanic a lot more now that your weapon breaking just means you get to make another crazy science experiment.
He's gonna make some weird crap, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. So we only have one copy of the game, and it's on my Switch, so he has to wait. And he's like, well, I can play on your Switch now. I was like, but it's my Switch. Being a little bit of a hog towards it, but he's got other games he's playing. He's good. He doesn't really play Nintendo as much. But anyway, Josh, favorite ARM ability, most used ARM ability. I forgot English for a second.
So favorite ARM ability, I have to say Ascend. I love that ability so much. I used it all the time whenever I was in the caves. My most used ability, this is gonna kind of go off the rails a little bit. I used Recall a lot, especially whenever I would puzzle solve. I know that sounds like a cheesy way to solve some puzzles. Like there was one time where like it's in the one of the final temples, the Spirit Temple, where you have to assemble Minaru's construct, and one of the puzzles has to do with getting one of her parts across this long gap, and there's like this long electric like beam or whatever. So basically what I did is, this is probably not the way you're supposed to do it, but I was thinking, this would work. So I used Ultra Hand, left it and just hovered it in midair for just a brief minute, brought it back down, used Recall, made it go all the way back up and went all the way up and magnesed it, and then Ultra Handed it to the other side. So I used Recall a lot when puzzle solving, so it just helped me a lot. Probably not the way Nintendo intended, but I still I used Ascend and I used Recall. Both of them are both my favorites. I use them both a lot, so it's kind of a tie between those two. Ultra Hand, I'm not a creative genius. I did not create a whole lot of insane stuff. I built some of the basic things. Like if I need a hot air balloon, I'm just gonna attach some things and create a hot air balloon and just go up. I know Alnuma said, explore this world as your imagination deems fit. Create the things as your imagination deems fit. I can't imagine a whole lot of stuff, so I just didn't really make a whole lot of I'm not that creative, so but anyway.
Well, I like hearing about the variety though. Also, I did the exact same thing for that part of constructing Minoru's thing. Wow, where I did the same thing because I was like, I can't figure out how to make this work, so I'm just doing it this way. And it's like, that's the beauty of the way Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are, is they're like, well, you figured it out, that means you did it right. That's all we care about. Your way is the right way.
That's exactly right.
And I love it. Love it. All right, Draken.
I'm with you, Geek, on the Ascent. I thought it's gonna be like Cryonis of this game. That's that ability that sort of exists, but is not as good as the other ones. Like from pre-release materials, it seemed like Ultra Hand will be the main thing. But when I played, I used Ascent a lot to get things done and to get around, and I like it very much. I'm also not that creative with the building. I just sort of did the bare minimum, the basics of what I needed. I sort of fell off of Ultra Hand after getting off of the Great Sky Island for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. I just didn't build as much. I didn't build as much. I built a lot on Great Sky Island, but after that, not much. So yeah, it was the Ascent. And one thing with Ascent that I did was I found the Construct Factory way before Mineral Quest even started. So I had no idea what this is for. I tried to talk to the construct running it that maybe we can do stuff with it, but it didn't really let me. So that was a little bit disappointing. But what I did was go to each of the depots, and they have these little chests that are barricaded off. So I just went around the building and found a spot that I can get underneath just to ascend up and get these chests just for the sake of it. And I did it. Got all of them.
That's awesome. Like, part of me wants to be like, oh, that's an oversight. But part of me is like, who cares? It's okay. Yeah, that's how this game is.
That's big brain time. That's what that is.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I love this game so much. All right, Gaming Reinvented.
To be honest, it's hard to think of a most usability because there's no Cryonis equivalent here that you don't use. There's no ability, it's like, this is useless, you'll never use it. I'd say probably Fuse, simply because every arrow probably has that fuse to it after about the first 5 minutes in. I've never really used normal arrows past like the intro. So I think that's probably my most used one. The weapons one less so, but still overly useful. For the best one overall, probably just Ultra Hand, to be honest. The things you can do with it are still crazy to me. Especially just how the crazy builds can move NPCs, or get to Sky Islands early, or just beat various bosses with ease, etc. There's a lot you can do with those that really just you wouldn't think would ever be possible. But then again, that's kind of the whole game in a way. It's like there's not a single ability is useless, and there's not a single one you don't use like 22 times in a single 30-minute session. It's like, I mean, okay, the only thing I can think that we'll never use is probably Amiibo, and that's because it's just once a day. So yeah, I'll take Fuse as for my most used, Ultra Hand probably for the best one, but they're all pretty good overall.
Agreed. And actually, I didn't even think about the arrows, so it probably actually is that Fuse is my most used. I did not even think about that, especially in the depths. The amount of light blooms I used trying to get all those light roots is insane. I did not even think about that. All right, Daniel.
Yeah, that's flattering.
Yeah, I'm fully with Nehru on the Fuse train. I'm not like huge into building vehicles. I'll do it like if I need to get around from point A to point B, but like combining or like just playing around with different weapon combinations and stuff I find really interesting because I'm a big combat guy. a lot of people watching my streams are like, well, why didn't you just do this stealth tactic when you were fighting those and I'm like, no, because I want to go face first, eyes closed, like head first into combat all the time. I'll go out of my way for it because I just find that gameplay, I find the combat mechanics really fun. And so kind of playing around with different weapon types plays into that. So I've been like, for a little bit, I was on the quest for like, what's the absolute strongest weapon fuse I could absolutely accomplish? Because I need a Lionel Rider sword that I'm going to keep in my pocket, and I did find it by butchering the poor Scimitar of the Seven. But this legendary weapon, actually, it's just a handle for my Lionel horns. But it's no, I just find that really fun and rewarding to do, because there's a certain like causality of like you collect it just feeds into that gameplay loop that I find really engrossing. You collect all the little bitties and good little monster parts, and you collect weapons, and then you have to spend those to make weapons, and then there's a gratification there. There's that nice hit of dopamine in my brain of like, you made something cool and now you get to use it. And yeah, definitely the blow of like losing a weapon is lessened here, because I'm like, well, okay, I lost this sword, but I've got like 600 bokoblin horns in my pocket right now. So it's like you never really truly lose a weapon because you have the resources. As long as you have the resources, you can make whatever weapon you want. So I'm definitely a collector. These games bring out my hoarding tendencies. So I just found like that whole thing was like, wow, this is a really good system that is like really rewarding to do. And even just making the weapons is fun in itself, but it having a direct sort of feedback loop of make weapons to gain weapons, make weapons to gain weapons, was just really cool. So Fuse is definitely my favorite. They're all good. They're all really good, but Fuse is definitely my favorite.
Yeah, I don't think there's any denying that all of the abilities were just so well thought out and so fun. And I had forgotten about the thing with Ascend, where you mentioned earlier about how it was just a thing for gameplay or like debugging, and then they were like, oh wait, we love this actually. I was gonna say something, I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh,
if you don't mind, I just wanted to say, right after Daniel said that, it just made me realize that one of my favorite game series other than Zelda is Monster Hunter. And the way Daniel just described it as make weapons to gain weapons, to make weapons, kill bigger monsters, I just realized that they just basically added the Monster Hunter loot system to Zelda.
Oh, and dang. All right.
Maybe that's why I love it so much.
Maybe.
God,
I mean, it makes sense.
I didn't even think about that.
But it works.
Right.
It works so well. And I haven't really gone back to Breath of the Wild aside from collecting footage, but it makes me wonder, like, I'm legit wondering, like, how is it gonna feel like kind of, I don't know, stunted in a way in comparison now that I've got this taste of like being able to customize these weapons in a way? I don't know. We'll see. But I have to revisit the game.
Yeah.
To reassess how I feel about it.
I haven't fully, like, I know I'm gonna need to go to it for gameplay comparison stuff, like some things that I'm gonna need, but I haven't really gone there yet. But the thing I remembered was I love that you have that area where if you fuse something and you realize you didn't want to fuse it like that in Terrytown, and you can save that item. I love that, because there have been a couple of times where I fused something, I was like, that's not what I meant to do, I'm such a dummy, but I don't want to lose that item or that gem, whatever it was. So I love that they thought of that too. Like, yeah, you're probably gonna have things, or you find items and you're like, well, I don't really want this really dumb rod, but I want the topaz on top of it though. So being able to do that.